Municipal Building Commission meeting to order for December 7th at 5:31 p.m. And the first order of business, we have Jerry Freecott, Terry DeSisto, Ed Stanton, Jackie Romanicki, and myself, so that gives us a quorum. And
See you later. Yeah, bye.
the first order of business then is to approve the minutes from November 2nd. Is there a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Then there's Mark. So the first thing we're going to do now, or the next thing we're going to do, is to have Mark and Arno speak to us about the gym floor project. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Excellent. So why don't you give us an update on the gym floor project?
Okay, well, good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Municipal Building Commission. My name is Mark Zalotsky. I am with Port Construction Consulting, and I have served as your clerk of the works and provided construction consulting for the duration since the origination of this project through future completion. We're here to present to you this evening requisition number 2, application for payment, that Arno Skalski from Socotech/CBI has reviewed and is certifying and making a recommendation for payment. Would you like to do that first, Mr. Chairman, or would you like to just basically generally hear about where we're at in the project?
Yeah, we generally pay the bills at the end, so I think that the best thing would be for you to explain where we are in the project.
Okay, so each of the schools, Hill Roberts and Hyman Fine, have been using the newly completed gym flooring since the end of October, actually since October 31st. There is a punch list, a monetized punch list, in fact, by Arno and his team, that the contractor has deferred completion of that punch list the work contained therein on the punch list until the December break. It involves some odor related items with paint and acrylic coatings and other miscellaneous items, and so rather than interfere with the operation of the school, they willingly deferred the completion of the items until the December holiday break. So we look forward to appearing before you in January to identify hopefully all the issues that have been addressed. So the schools have been using the floor. We've gotten good positive feedback. There are a couple of items that need to be addressed by the contractor, but generally speaking, the school is using them and is very pleased with the new flooring compared to the prior, and certainly because of the condition of the prior floors, this has been a successfully completed project.
Anything to add, Arno?
Just that, yeah, the floors are in use. I think overall the project came out well in terms of its intended use. As Mark said, there's a few punch list items primarily relating to cosmetic issues, but overall it's we're pretty pleased with the floor. So we are going to be meeting. We do have one issue, however, at the Hyman Fine School, where there's some of the areas of the floor have an undulating surface to them. We're not sure exactly what that's attributable to. It could be the underlayment or substrate, or else just some of the glue hasn't completely set. But we're going to visit that on Friday and get a better assessment of it. But overall, I think we're okay with it.
And so we do have a requisition from F.J. Roberts for work through September 30th, $175,128.28. And each of you are recommending this to us?
Yes, I sent it up front, yes.
And Mark,
Yes.
you're good with it. And this leaves us with how much money left in the project?
139,846.53 inclusive of the retainage, which is more than adequate to cover the current monetized punch list and miscellaneous credits, which we will be discussing with the contractor.
Okay. So we have a sufficient amount of money to ensure that the punch list will get done.
I think so, sir.
Okay, good. Then I know that Councilor Waterman is in the audience, and he was a champion of this project.
I was the champion for a long time.
Yes, the champion.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm getting your names right. Is it Arno?
Arno
Yes.
Skalski and Mark
Arno,
Zawadzki.
can you make it a little easier for me? I'm imagining a floor that might be slightly slightly curved.
Can you go to the
Hey,
podium,
Ty?
Mr. Waterman?
Ty, could you come up to the podium, because
Oh, sure.
the microphone is helpful for those in the
Yeah, I
audience.
tell people that when I'm a
The
counselor.
tens of
I didn't
people
go
who are
myself.
watching this at home.
Ty Waterman, 33 Dorchester Ave, Attleboro. Arno, this question I think is for you. Can you talk a little bit more about the undulating surface? I realize you don't know all the details at this point, but is that affecting the floor itself in any way?
I'm not, again, I haven't seen the condition yet, so it's difficult for me to describe
Okay,
what the actual problem is or, concern is. But there, definitely the floor has, the surface of the floor, it has a bit of an undulation to it. Not the entire floor, just an area of the floor.
okay. Have they been holding their regular gym classes at this point? Do we know that?
That's my understanding.
Okay, all right. Well, I don't think they'd
Mr.
hold.
Waterman, yes,
We've been-
and I'd like to just add to it, if I
Thank
may.
you.
Mark Zawadzki, we've met on site several times.
Right.
And spent some time together. So the undulations that Arno has referenced are reported by the end user group, and we are scheduled to visit the site on Friday to determine whether or not they continue to exist, because the comments and the presentation of those undulations were in early November, right after completion, or right after beneficial use and occupancy of the floor. We don't know if they flattened and settled. We haven't heard any complaints. We haven't received any trip or fall hazards.
Okay.
And we do know that the new flooring is far more safer than the prior product, as it fully complies with all of the ASTM F2772 requirements. So we're going to pursue this to validate, verify whether or not this is just an effective lighting, or whether or not this is an actual concern and issue that needs to be addressed.
All right.
But that is only one item of the monetized punch list that we need to make sure that we get specific performance on.
Well, I appreciate it, and I understand that you need to look at it yourself this coming week, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
They have submitted Recs 3 and 4, but they just submitted those yesterday, and we're not prepared to act on them, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Any questions from the commission members? All right, then I want to thank you for your presentation tonight and making the time for us, and we'll look forward to seeing you at our next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I wish you a happy holiday season and happy new year. Thank you so much.
And the same to both of you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, next on our agenda was the public safety feasibility study, but because we have the Council on Aging tonight and the architect there was looking for a significant time block, we've pushed them back. Would December 21st work for this group to have a special meeting to deal with that project? Don't all say yes at once.
That should work for me.
Okay with you, Jerry?
I'm fine.
Okay, then we will tell Jeremy that we will schedule them for the 21st, and we'll give them the night. And if they need a significant period of time, we may move it over to the Zito room just so we don't bump into the Conservation Commission again. So keep your ears open. So that, we'll take care of that. And then the building inventory study, that money has gone down to the council as of yesterday, so hopefully they will give that money to us soon so we can do that. The Attleboro Pawtucket Interconnect, they just got numbers at the finance team, so I would imagine that sometime soon they will send down for a bond issuance for that. And that leaves us with, I know, the city council has before it, I understand they will be acting soon on the seed money to plan the pavilion at Highland Park. So that is something that's going on for us too. So hopefully we will get really, really busy over the next few months. And so then, other than paying the bills, it seems to me that we need the presentation on the Council on Aging. And what I'm going to do is to invite all of the audience members who want to, if you want to come up and take chairs here so that you can see and hear, I don't have a problem with that.
Is it possible to make that bigger?
You're asking the wrong guy.
Yeah.
If you go all the way over there, you get the best view.
Can I get over there?
Somebody can sit
The
here,
expert
somebody can
says
sit in the
that's
clerk's chair if you want, somebody can sit here.
That's the presentation.
Okay.
So.
You may not be open to this. Where people really ought to be
good
sitting
spot.
is here.
Yeah, no.
Because there's a lot of information here I want to review.
Yeah,
And my guess is nobody will be able to see it. I'm happy to talk about it and point to it, but,
I think that's what we're gonna have to do.
okay.
John,
John?
there's a good seat right there.
It's kind of closer here.
Okay.
All right, everybody in the audience happy?
Yeah.
Okay, so introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is David Eisen, a principal at Abacus Architects and Planners. And we want to focus today on, so I should just keep going, right? You're not, I'll keep, on site issues as they relate to Council on Aging study. There are two components to what we're doing. They overlap with each other. One is to look at the program, what should be inside a Council on Aging, what kind of exterior facilities, and the other question is where should it go? And the programming has been held up because the Council on Aging director left. We've been waiting for a new Council on Aging director. She started yesterday, and my understanding is she quit today.
That has been confirmed to me by Jeremy Stull.
Yes.
And so therefore, it's back to the drawing board posting. I can see John's shock. I suppose the silver lining is if she was going to quit, it was better now than 90 days from now.
Yeah.
But that is, yes, that is the kick in the head we got today.
Yeah. And my suggestion, recommendation is that you have us keep going, that at the last meeting we talked about cost constraints on a new Council on Aging. That more or less sets the square footage. We've done enough Council on Aging facilities. We have a pretty good idea. If you can afford 11,000 square feet, what should go in them? And my guess is when you get a new director, if we've developed the plan, I don't think we want to finalize anything. the new director would say something like, yeah, this is really good. Can you do a little bit of moving here and there? So that's my suggestion, and I don't know who would say, yes, you should do that, or no, you should wait.
That would be us.
Okay.
And my inclination is to say that we should keep doing what we're doing, commission members.
Agree.
Okay?
Okay, so what we would do then is based, and I don't know if if there's an acting director, maybe talk to, is there an acting director?
There will be.
Okay.
I hear that there will be.
Somebody will be, we
Okay.
believe somebody will be appointed.
So my suggestion is that we work with them, we not finalize anything, and the hope is certainly that you have every real director, so we bounce it off the board, off the acting director, we keep going, and we'll build in enough flexibility. So it sounds like that's the direction we should go.
Right, and just so you know, we have some significant members of the board here tonight, in addition to the Municipal Building Commission, and we have a member of the Municipal Council here tonight. So you have an audience in the palm of your hand.
Okay.
So tell us
Yeah.
what we need to know.
Well, what you need to know is what I'm going to show you here. And when we interviewed for this study, we said we are experts on planning and design and senior centers. You are experts on Attleboro. Well, so we are going to show you all of the site information we've gathered, what we really need from whether it's you or Jeremy or we follow up on later, is feedback on what we're going to show you, because there are a whole series of sites on the table. We need to narrow these down based on input from us and input from you. So I'm going to run through this and...
Probably be able to give you some input tonight.
I'm sorry?
We'll probably be able to give you some input tonight.
Okay.
But I think that if you have a PowerPoint that you can email to Jeremy,
Which I did.
okay, and then he'll share it with us, then we'll have a chance to look at it, and maybe in 2 weeks when we meet again, we can ask the group for some thoughts to get back to you. Not that you have to be here, but we can proceed in 2 weeks with some thoughts.
And if there's anything that could be done quicker, it's up to you, because this back and forth is...
The wheels of government grind slowly.
Yeah. Okay, and I can stay in touch with Jeremy on this so that we get the input, because we need direction. So there are a series of sites here, and in the screen back in the office, they were really clear. The colors here are quite different. They're outlined here.
Excuse me for a second.
I think he needs to be at the podium, doesn't he?
I think,
For this-
Jim, is the microphone movable?
No. So if you just stand here, there is a laser pointer.
Yeah, and I guess I could do this.
Yeah.
It's just that there's so much information here. So
Why don't we try to use the laser pointer, because there are 5-10 people at home watching this?
Yeah. Okay. So what we did, here are all of the sites that you brought to our attention. And there are a bunch of them, and some of them are bigger, and some of them are smaller. So the first thing we did is we laid them out on a map of the city. So you could see which ones are close to the center of town, which ones are closer to the edge of town. And this raises a question. Are there preferences for, let's say, in the center of town, or in the edge of town, or near here, or near here, or near here? And we're going to give you a lot of factual information, but some of this is subjective about what would seem to be on the part of our clients.
I can speak for myself at this point, but I think we're looking for the best site.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that we're wedded to any particular place. I think there might be a bias in favor of something closer to downtown.
Okay.
But on the other hand, when we put the senior center where it is now, it was not thought that anybody would drive there, and that it would be public transportation would be important. And 25 years later, it's just not the case. So I think that one of the
And
things
what's not the case?
that it's public transportation and no one would drive there. So I think that what I've heard is that the idea of some place that people could drive to and where there would be enough parking would be a significant factor in making our determination. And I'm getting nods from around the table, so
Yes.
I think that it does not have to be downtown. A lot of people I see at Finberg Schools on the bottom there. Finberg Schools almost in Seekonk, but on the other hand, if it was the right site, it's not that far to drive to.
Yeah.
The YMCA site on Pleasant Street, I think, is also on there.
Yep, has plenty of parking.
And that, if I had to choose between Finberg and that, I'd probably choose that because it's closer to the center of town. But I think we want your input and your judgment, your guidance as to what is good about these sites, what's bad about these sites,
Yeah.
and what your recommendation might be.
Yeah, and I have like 40 more images to show here, and there are 20 different ways of doing good, bad, and in between. And this is the challenge here. There are lots of different ways to judge what's good and bad, and we're always happy to offer our opinions, but again, you are the people on the ground. And you said you would prefer which over which? Or maybe at this point, it's the general point that,
Whatever the best site is what our preference is.
yeah.
Now, we're asking you to help us figure out what's best.
Yeah, yeah. And what I'm saying is I'm asking you to help us figure out what's best, and together we'll work on this. So I'm trying to, here's enough. So here are the sites. So we looked at the sites in relationship to zoning, and
You have to worry about zoning because
Yeah.
municipal buildings are allowed in all
Yep.
zones.
yeah. So no, but this is good background information. So some of these we can play down as being important, but there's a lot of due diligence here, so if the questions come up. So
Right.
it's not a critical
The
factor.
issue that arises is tangential to zoning in the sense that if you put something in the middle of a residential area, some neighbors might or might not be as happy with it as something that's in a more commercial type of zone. But again, zoning in and of itself is not an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, no, understand that. And then, but with this helps you see if it's in the middle of a residential neighborhood, zoning may allow it, but it might not be the right neighborhood. We looked at it in relation to water resources. So one of the issues is there are a whole series of wetlands, there are a whole series of rivers, so that there may be a site that's way bigger than you need, except most of the site is wetland and we can't build on it. So again, this is the best site, worst site. This helps us evaluate this. And what you're going to see, we've laid this over a map of the entire town, then we're going to zero in on specific sites. Topography is a big issue. There are sites that kind of look good, and then we realize, oh my gosh, it slopes 50 feet from this end to the other end, and it's going to make it challenging. It might be a site that's really, really good in some ways, but the topography is going to make it more difficult. So again, this is some of the back and forth
Constructability
here.
and handicap access are two important factors, and topography would play a role in that.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I said constructability,
Yep.
cost, and handicap access are important factors, and so topography can certainly play a role.
Yep, yep. So what we're showing is the sites that may have more topographic challenges and the ones that have less, to help us make decisions about cost, benefits, and what's appropriate. And there are different kinds of habitat, and these are the kinds of things that we come up when we move into reviewing with Conservation Commission, with neighborhood groups. This, again, is background information. It does not appear that there are core habitats that impact most of these sites. This is good to know. The question comes up. We've kind of answered that. So now we're zeroing in and we're looking at the neighborhood context, because that's very useful for us and probably for you to understand what might be the best site, the most appropriate site, the worst site, what the conflicts might be. So we've looked at, these possible sites appear to be kind of in clusters. So here's near the center of town. There are a series of sites, and this helps us judge, well, this isn't right in the town center where, and what we hear from seniors often is too much traffic, parking is too hard. We would prefer to be a walkable distance from the center of town, but we don't want to drive round and round and round the block or have too small a site for parking. So as you move further away, there's probably less traffic. There may be fewer issues with parking depending on the site, but it is people are less likely to walk. And I'm hearing what you're saying, that public transportation and walking, Attleboro is a fairly big city. Many or most people will drive, but we do want to at least keep in mind how we could encourage people to walk based on the location. If we're near a population center, that may be advantageous. And more of the sites in the neighborhood context. And then this just shows the size of the sites. We have teeny tiny sites, we have great big sites. There's nothing either good nor bad, but there we go. So then we're blowing this up and looking at very specific sites. Let me just check something here. Okay. So this is the site A from our list. Industrial, single-family residential. The current use and owner is the YMCA. So what we've done...
I sat next to someone on the YMCA, or was on the YMCA board at lunch today, and I said, is this on the table? And he said, make us an offer. So this site is apparently in play.
Okay, so I'm going to take some notes and make me an offer. That's not the worst starting point. It's not the best. So that is for...
It's better than it's not for sale.
Okay. And this was something I had thought all of these sites were potential sites. So I wasn't sure about this. So at least this site is a potential site. So then what we did for each of these sites is we said, okay, let's suppose there's a 15,000 square foot single-story council on aging building and 60 parking spaces. How would that fit on the site? So this says there's value in the existing building, and I don't know whether that's the case. It's probably pretty difficult to do an adaptive reuse of a YMCA for a COA. That may or may not be the case, but we said this is what it looks like to drop on 60 parking spaces in the COA. So
would this be leaving that building in place, or are you talking about knocking that down?
This is leaving it in place. Now, we could do another version. We could just take that parking lot and that building and drop it right on top of the existing YMCA building, assuming it's torn down. Or we could look in more, if there is the sense, this is a pretty good site, this is a good opportunity, but we want to keep the building, we could look at in more detail about adaptive reuse of the existing building. So this is where I want to kind of get feedback.
Ty?
Yeah, I'm Ty Waterman, City Council. Mm-hmm. That site was visited about, 2 or 3 years ago by the Council on Aging?
Year and a half, probably.
A year and a half?
Yeah.
It was, the mayor was kind of pushing the idea. I was not on that visit. I assume some people here, were any of you on that visit?
Yeah, I was.
You were. My understanding, John, was that site was rejected for various reasons. Am I right about that?
Well, when we looked at it, it was as a possibility of sharing it with the YMCA.
Oh,
So
That's different.
That would not have worked. As a standalone, I think that's a different view of it.
And there is a pool there, right?
There's a pool,
There's a track
a
upstairs.
track.
Yeah, I've never been in
I
the
don't think there's
building.
an elevator, though, to get to the track,
I
is there?
don't think
I don't think
so.
there's an elevator.
It's on
There was no kitchen, okay?
Yeah, there's no kitchen.
No kitchen. There's a couple of gyms in there. They're smaller than the gym space we're currently using at West Street. And we're getting 60 or 70 people to some of these events.
But if we were to build something at this site, we're using that building, is there anything that said we couldn't put an addition on
Yeah.
the building?
So we can't.
Right.
Do a one level and then keep,
It's got a lot of possibilities, I
Oh,
think.
yeah.
Potentials.
What about this? What about saying, because I don't know for a fact that it's more expensive to do adaptive reuse of the existing building than to either tear it down and build it.
So they want you to get back to that microphone.
Microphone.
David, how many
and can
parking
I
spaces
do-
are there? Oh,
A lot.
Just because I have these hearing aids, even with the hearing aids, I can hear you a lot better if I'm a little bit closer to you. So what about this idea that we build right here? And there's a lot of due diligence to be done, but a new facility across the way.
When you say across the way, I'm not, are those two buildings on the left, are they,
They're existing,
those are
Yeah.
those are the Y buildings?
yes.
Yeah, this is the existing, so there's a drive here.
Yeah.
And we pull or off of Texans Way, we pull off of there, drive, parking, and is there any reason, if we're saying the site's a possibility, maybe it sounded like there's some skepticism of sharing and moving into the existing building.
No, there would be no sharing. It
Yeah.
would be a city building or not a city
Yeah.
building. It would-
Yeah, so two options, you could buy it and use the existing building. Three options, you could tear down the existing building and build it over here, or you could say, well, you buy the whole site, you rent this out, and you build a new facility over here.
Do you have an opinion as to whether 60 parking spaces is adequate?
Yeah, I mean, that should be enough for 15,000 square feet. And then there's frustration if there's a big event a few times a year, it may be more people. You know,
is
if you
more
figure
No.
zoning for this kind of facility is 3 spaces per 1,000, so in theory 45 is enough, but then there's staff. And then here, I mean, we could add more spaces or less. So there's a new COA director. She thinks her experience is, you need more, that's fine.
So this is a realistic possibility.
Throw that out.
We think it is. You have knowledge that we don't based on the work that's being done. So if there are questions or other options, we want to hear from you.
I believe that that Melissa has filled in the questionnaire that you
Yeah.
sent. And I believe in there she's putting that the need for parking is around 150.
And in that,
don't know what
I can't imagine if you had a 30 or 35,000 square foot facility, that would make sense, except from what I understand about the budget, even this, I think, would cost more than what's in your budget. I can't imagine why you would need that many spaces at a COA.
Well,
I think for certain functions, like for example, there's a Christmas party next Wednesday.
Yeah,
Good News Bible Chapel, 180 people are going to attend.
yeah. And usually if there are 180 people, maybe there are 2 per car. You can't count on that. And you're probably better off if it's once a year to have someone doing valet parking on a remote. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, there are several functions where you could get 150, 180 people.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
it's
not a
something to
once-a-year
keep in
thing, so,
mind.
yeah.
We're only at the barest preliminary
Right.
stage
Understood.
now. And whether it's 60 spaces or 100 spaces or 40 spaces, I don't think is where we're at. I think
Yeah.
where we're at is to say that the site appears to be a possible site.
Yeah. And then we can tell you adaptive reuse is unlikely to be, make the most sense, but you may say, oh, we love that building. You may say, you hate that building. You might say, please tear this building down and build on top of it. And this is where we don't have an opinion on that. I take that back. If we're up to us, we would just build over here, but it's not just up to us. So we don't need to answer all of these questions. The first question is it still on the table? If it's on the table, that's fine. You might want to consider this question in more
I
detail.
think it's still on the table.
Yeah.
That's clear.
Okay, so maybe one of the things to do is to keep moving. I'll throw out the questions to you, and then we can talk to you in more detail. We can talk to Jeremy. You could talk amongst yourselves, because I'm not sure we're going to get resolution on these. So does that make sense to keep going?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then we looked at 34 Forest Park, and we have the former health club building, and there's a bunch of parking, and there's the community college. So this is pretty big site. It's been used for other things. So we said, well, let's leave the former health club building alone. Now, somebody might say, no, it's existing building. We want you to use that. But, the same question, is it cost effective to do
It
that?
has
I thought we were
significant
Yeah, where's that
hazardous
one?
waste site. It's significant hazardous waste material there.
Okay, and
On all those
Yeah.
buildings, they haven't sold them because
34 I know has significant hazardous waste.
So
Yeah.
is this, the buildings at Texas Instruments had numbers. What are we talking about? Building 1, 2? What are we talking about here?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
I don't understand. what
Building
this-
1, it says.
It's Building 1.
it's facing Forest Street, right?
Yeah, so Building 1 has been granted a special permit to be turned into mini storage, so I don't think it's for sale.
The entire site.
Right. That's my understanding, but
Okay.
that,
And this is, and that would have been good to know before we did these drawings. We were, I think the suggestion was that these were viable sites. If they're not viable sites, we'll take them off.
I don't think that site is for sale. That would be something we would have to look into, but I don't think it's for
And
sale.
even if it were, I would be very concerned about the hazardous waste material there, because that was the radiation building
Yeah.
at TI. That's
Well-
where they did the dials on the watches and things.
Yeah. Well, what we're suggesting is
Yeah.
that you don't reutilize existing building, that within that lot, you reutilize, you build on an open space here. There's a lot of open
I would
space.
suggest that we pass this site for now.
I was,
Okay.
yes. Go on.
Okay, so we will, Site B, we will put a stop to that. We will do nothing more because there are questions about it.
I think there are questions, and as I said, I don't think it's for sale.
Okay,
Only because my partner just got a special permit for the mini storage facility.
Well, I went by there today and the doors were open, people were in and out of it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And this is good. The entire point is to winnow down this list.
Okay.
Site C, and this is quite a big site. There's some topography.
So
And again,
this
this
is
is,
Highland Park.
what's that?
Highland Park?
That's Highland Park.
Yes.
Yeah, Highland Country Club.
Yeah, well, it's Highland Park
Highland
now.
Park now.
Okay.
The city owns it.
Yep.
And there are some significant issues with Highland Park now, and we would probably need a legal determination from the city solicitor, because there is a significant question now as to whether Article 97 of the state constitution would allow any development on this site for anything other than a park. I worked with the city planner, the conservation agent, the city solicitor, and the mayor last week on this property. There had been a proposal to rezone the clubhouse and parking lot and sell it off. That has now been the mayor has now asked to withdraw that. But there is a case called Smith versus Westfield that seems to say that if something looks like a park and quacks like a park, then it is a park. And Ty's looking at me a little strange.
Keep going.
That's not exactly the way the SJC said it.
Oh, okay, all right.
Probably not.
And that says that even without a formal declaration of it being a park and placing it by a deed restriction under Article 97, you can back into it. And so this property is now named a park. It has a sign that says it's a park. The public uses it as a park. It is in the state budget, or city budget, as a park. It is given to the park department for maintenance, and the park commissioners issue permits for its use. So there is a strong argument that it is already subject to Article 97. In addition to that, the mayor has asked the city council to enter into a formal declaration that it is subject to Article 97. I don't know what the council will do with that.
We just heard about it last night.
Yeah, well, I only heard about it last Thursday, Ty, so. But the bottom line is that without some further legal opinions, I'm not sure that this would be available, because Article 97 of the state constitution says you can't use parkland for anything other than a park unless there is a 2/3 vote of each of the houses of the state legislature.
Oh, jeez.
There's a former member of the state legislature sitting out there in the audience, and he knows how hard it is to get such a vote.
Even if you're all in the same party.
Oh, yeah, right.
So you're saying the site's off the table?
Yes.
So
In a
I
nutshell.
would say to you that at this point, we ought to put a pause on this. I wouldn't say it's necessarily off the table, but I think we ought to put a pause on this site
See if there's
for the
something.
next month or so to see how that shakes out. Now, it may be that in the declaration of, and if the council adopts it, if there's a declaration that's recorded in the Registry of Deeds, it makes an exception for a council on aging building. But I don't know that we're there yet, and I would hate to have you spend your time working on a site that may be legally off the table.
Yep. But here's some useful information, that here's the site, 60 parking spaces, 15,000 square feet. So I understand it could be 1 foot by 1 foot, and you'd still have to go through the process. But what this says is, it's a pretty small chunk of the site. We will table this for the moment.
Can you orient us as to where we are? Where is the current entrance?
This is Rathbun Willard Drive.
Oh, okay, so this is, okay, so the area that you have highlighted there in the lower left is approximately the area where we have the 350-car parking lot that serves temporarily the needs of the contractor for the high school.
I don't think so. Isn't that the paved part
It looks
there?
like
At
the parking
H?
right
Oh, yeah,
Side of
okay,
H?
so
that's
it's to the
further
left.
down.
All right, so over to the left, there are significant wetlands issues.
Well, they didn't show up on our map, because we tracked all the wetlands, and you can see, that's what all these squiggly lines are.
The conservation agent's in the back of the room. Nick, could you come forward for a minute?
He knows.
No, really, we tried to be really careful not to put
Understood,
it on
but the expert's here.
Yep.
So Nick, if you look at Highland, at the bottom, Rathbun Willard Drive, you can see where the parking lot is. And we're not sure legally whether under Article 97 we could use that site, but somewhere over near where the old 7th hole used to be, would that be, off the top of your head, would that be something that might be developable?
Oh, I mean, where you have the rectangles down there?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's absolutely wetlands there. There's a stream that comes through, and then what used to be portions of the old fairway, and then some of the rough that was before the fairway, classified as wetlands.
So here's the thing. We did a lot of research. So we knew exactly where the wetlands are and where the buffer is. Oh, but that's not the case.
Did you have a professional wetland scientist go out there? Or did you just use GIS data?
Oh, of course, we just used we used GIS. We didn't send.
Okay.
What we need, if the information we got, and this is, we need information from the town, because we're just wasting everybody's time.
So we do have information because we got permits, we got stormwater and wetlands permits to construct that parking lot. So I think that we can provide you with some wetlands information.
Okay.
I can provide that, Jack. If you want to email me tomorrow, I
Yeah.
can scan those plans.
Yeah, if you, for all of the sites, and there are all of these, there's series of sites, if you could send me any information that would impact developability,
David, I
we will
don't know
modify
that we can put
these
that
maps.
burden on the conservation agent at this point, but let me just say that there are wetlands issues there, and there's Article 97 issues
Right.
there. We'll get you the wetlands information we have, but I think we need to pause this site.
Okay, that's fine. But maybe if we can get wetlands information on all the sites, because we don't want to have incorrect information. So
Well,
if we-
I don't know that the wetlands information exists. I just happen to know that because I wear another hat as the vice chair of the school building
Yeah.
committee, and so I guided that through the permitting process in front of the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board, and so I know that we had the wetlands flagged for that purpose.
And
The
this
other
is
sites
where-
may not have had that level of scrutiny
Yeah.
yet.
So this is where we need you, because we can do our due diligence. So, but there.
Thank you, Nick.
But this could be here, this could be here. The point is still the same, not that it has to go here.
Right,
You
but
can-
the Article
it's a
9,
teeny
Article
tiny-
97
Yeah.
is a large legal impediment, and we need to, before we ask you to spend any more time on
Yep.
this site, we need to
Yeah.
get a further determination.
Right, got it. Okay, and then here is Site D and Attleboro High School. And,
This is the old high school.
old.
yeah,
And so that site, were you looking at an adaptive reuse of that site?
well, adaptive reuse tends not to be cost effective for something like a
So were
senior
you
center.
thinking of knocking the building down?
Well, this is where I want to turn to you. If you
So,
say
so
is
this
a-
building has been for sale by the city. No one has bid on it. And I don't know that we would want to knock that building down and build on this site, but, you know, the topography on that site's pretty extreme, isn't it?
Yes,
I look back,
just put it in there.
I don't think so. I mean, we've tried, you showed topography, I can go back and look at it.
Right, but I would find it hard to believe at this point that the city would be willing to forego selling that property and to knock that building down, but I think we need some guidance from the mayor, and maybe because we only have a mayor and then an acting mayor until sometime in the middle of February, we may need input from whoever becomes the mayor.
I sit on the city property committee, which would determine the future of this building. There's been a request by the mayor to remove the facade restriction so that we can sell it. There's only been one offer, by the way, and they wanted to demolish it. The parking is almost non-existent. I can't stress how bad the parking situation would be.
You'd have to knock it down to create enough
Yeah.
parking, there'd be no doubt about that.
In theory, you could fit the building and parking, and you could probably fit 100 parking spaces with that green space.
Have you seen how steep it is there?
I haven't, we looked at the topography on paper, and it didn't look like it would.
Very steep.
You probably should take a ride by.
Yeah, yep, I will definitely do that.
I can,
So I think
I'm running out of breath when I
understand the
walk up to
constraints
it.
of this site, so let's go to the next site.
Our seniors
Okay,
couldn't
but,
handle it.
And
let me just
again,
ask a question.
you know, we really want you back at the
Okay,
podium.
sorry about that. I will try and remember to stand here. The question is, what do we do with this? Do we table this site till we
I
get
think
more?
you should table this site as well.
Okay. That's an easy thing to do. Richardson School, and here's what
This
it
would
looked.
be another knockdown project, correct?
Yeah.
You tell us.
It would be
If you
another
said,
knockdown.
no, we want you to see if adaptive reuse would
There's no
work,
adaptive
we would
reuse.
do that.
It's a big building.
Yeah. But what we've done here is just said, what does it look like? This is a pretty small site.
So this again would require a policy determination by the mayor and council that that site was available either for adaptive reuse or for a scraper.
Okay, so are we saying put a pause on this until we get more information?
I think at this point, I would put a pause on it, but I think that we're going to need some policy direction as to whether this site and others may or may not be on
Yeah.
the table.
Yeah.
But, you know, I know that when we sat with you at the kickoff meeting, we did talk about the potential of having it here It's certainly downtown, it's certainly big enough, but there are tenants in there, and whether those tenants would have someplace else to go is another thing that's beyond the scope of the Municipal Building Commission.
Yeah. And this is why determining the best site is so difficult, because there's the human factor. Are you going to throw the tenants out? Certainly, it's a small site. It doesn't look advantageous.
And the tenants are mostly social service agencies, if I remember right.
That need that area.
And so the tenants are not organizations that have a lot of money to spend in other
Yeah.
places.
Yeah. Well, we're going to put this in the pause column, and then you can give us more information about off the table for this
No,
reason.
thank you for bringing it up, because we did give it to you in the list, so let's
Yeah.
go to Site F.
So here is Site F, and
Is this the federal government?
It's the Armory, I think. Yeah.
What?
I think it's the Armory.
It's
The Army Reserve.
building.
It's the Army Reserve down across the river from the DPW.
Yeah, no, it's not the Armory, it is the Army Reserve,
Reserve.
right?
Spelled Thatcher wrong on that
Yeah,
map.
I'm sorry.
And so
It's got an extra T in it.
the problem with this site is we would have to acquire it from the federal government. But apart from that, does this site work?
in theory, we're staying clear of those existing buildings. We're saying, there's a bunch of space there, and it certainly fits.
And the topography is okay, wetlands, no problem?
Yeah. Again, our check said no wetlands on these sites. The reality may be different, but based on everything we know, neither the topography, there are no problems here. Because
How many parking spaces, sir, is there in this one?
They have to build them.
60 spaces are shown.
There's
If
a
you
lot
wanted
more.
100, we could get 100.
160.
Well,
Based on
again,
current,
To be
current
determined.
numbers.
we're not here to decide the number of parking spaces. We're trying to decide which sites we should further explore.
I have some information about that.
Ty?
Yeah. So that is owned by the federal government. And I have spoken already to our congressman and to his office. They've looked into it and gotten back to me maybe within the last 4 or 5 months. It would not be available to us in all likelihood for about 4 years. It has to be offered to a series of different levels, like to the state, before it can ever get down to the city. The city would not be the first offer. And also, there's a question of how much you would have to, whether you could use that site on the inside. There's probably a lot of lead in there, because that's also been a shooting range at one point inside. So I don't know anybody who's actually walked inside of it. It's been locked up for quite a few years. Maybe somebody here has.
If you got serious about any site with any possibility of contamination, we would suggest doing a Phase 1 environmental site assessment, so we have more science.
Given what Councilor Waterman has to say, it seems like, this is not ruled out, but it seems like it's
It's on the pause.
it's probably not going to fit in our timeline.
Okay.
So, okay. Next,
So we will certainly not put in any more work.
Conservation Commission?
Yeah.
Next door?
Okay. Thanks.
So, what's the next site?
The next site, 792 Tiffany, vacant land. There are a series of, issues and challenges here which are documented. Whether this conforms to the latest reality, I don't know, but this is what we got from Mass GIS. And we're saying, and there's, a fair amount of, slope here, not the worst site, but it appears as if that might not be a bad site.
Okay, so 792 Tiffany Street, I'm trying to figure out where this is.
So here's Tiffany, here's 95.
Look it up on your phone.
Orr's Pond is there.
But which part of it is?
Oh, okay, so is that Orr's Pond, that blue thing?
Down in the
Yeah.
bottom corner.
Oh, okay, that's
Oh,
Orr's Pond,
lower
okay.
left, yeah.
And so that's land that's owned by the city?
Water department.
What?
The water department, perhaps?
I think it might be in the jurisdiction of the water department.
Entire site is in the water pond.
It's very close.
Water district. That's what it says right there.
So if I remember right, that's a very low wet site, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. It's on the east side of Tiffany Street going south.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is the wet part of the site is here, based on the information we have. Wet is not an issue here, at least as far as a regulatory issue, unless we find out, surprise, surprise, it's now a wetland.
Well,
I read what that
this
street
probably, excuse me, this probably, I mean, it's not off the table, but it probably requires somebody to put some eyeballs on it.
Yeah.
In terms of wetness.
Yeah.
And really, there are different kinds of wetlands, I mean, different kinds of wet issues. What really matters is it a wetland? And to have a wetland biologist go out there and flag that, which may or may not be the time frame of this project. So one thing to do is to keep this on the table. If you get serious about development, we could talk to conservation.
One of the things, though, that we might be able to do would be to convince Nick Wiley, the conservation agent, to take a site visit with you.
Okay.
And take a look at it and determine if
Where's Noise Pond?
if it is a buildable site or not.
Yeah.
Okay?
And certainly, anything that's on the table, we will go out and look at, and from an architectural perspective, evaluate, are there challenges we missed? And we can be in touch with conservation and see what they say.
Okay. Do we have any other sites?
Yep. So we're saying G is it's not off the table, it's not on hold, it's a possibility. Everything that's a possibility, we need to do more due diligence. So, is that where we're leaving this?
Yes.
No idea.
Okay. Site H. So this is a very steep, certainly the steepest, New England Sports Ventures,
Village.
which is over here, I think, and they own the land. Is this tax issues?
Oh, yes, they're in bankruptcy, too. That is the land that is owned by NESV Land East? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, what we have is New England Sports Ventures. That's who we've been told the owner is.
Yeah, NESV.
Yeah, yeah.
But they have divided their site into 6 or 7 separately owned LLCs, all owned by the same organization. So there is NESV Ice, Tennis, Hotel, Land East, and Fields, I think, are all of them. So it looks to me like this might be Land East, which I was told recently might be up for sale.
Yeah.
And so this site, if we could acquire it, it's basically County Street and Commerce Way, right?
Yep.
And so it has access off of Commerce Way, and it's a very large site. But there are significant wetlands out there, and there are significant slope issues out there, correct?
The slope is a huge issue, so about this seems to be the most buildable area. We could make this work, but topography is a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I know that just to the left of that is the Mar Seafood site, which I just got the permits for a industrial facility. And basically, they're carving that into the side of the hill, which is always expensive, but it would, I mean, if that land is for sale, and I heard that it is, but of course the seller's in bankruptcy, and they owe the city $1 million in taxes. If that is for sale, then I think that's a potential site. One of the things I always wondered about was with whether that would be a site that we could put the public safety building on as well, if we were to acquire it, and maybe build a new city hall there in my dreams. But, and have a nice government complex. But I think that this is a site that I would say is worth exploring, even though we don't own it.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, a site like this, for housing, you can accommodate the slope. A public building like a senior center, it's harder. I would say a public safety building is really hard to put on a site with much slope, because you have, if there's a fire station in it, there's an apron. This is not my area of expertise. It's hard to imagine public
You
safety.
don't have to worry about that.
Yeah,
I think
senior
what you have to
center.
worry about is the fact that this site may have some possibilities
Yeah.
that may be for sale.
Okay. And
Sir, are you looking for the Conservation Commission? On the other side of the wall. So this is a possibility.
yeah. And from a design perspective, if you said this is the site, we could make it work, but the topography will cost you money, it will cost, it'll be a challenge, but we're not recommending taking it off the table because of that. Because each of these lines is 10 feet. So between this line and this line, 10 feet, 10 feet, 10 feet, 10 feet.
So there's a 50-foot hill there.
Yeah. So, and we could organize the site better. I'm not sure we would really develop it like this. We would probably move the parking back and put the building in front of it. So this is not laid out in the best way. We would probably confine it to 20 feet, but that's still a chunk of retaining wall.
Yes, and there are significant stormwater issues because the water just comes cascading down the hill.
Yeah.
And there are wetlands out in that area as well. Nick may have some wetlands information on that, so I will ask him about Highland and about NESV to send you any wetlands information he has on both of those.
Okay. Okay.
I'm getting the evil eye here.
No, it's not an evil eye. I think it would depend on which part of Highland, whether there's wetland issues. That's my guess.
Yeah, well, we were looking down at the lower left side there.
Yeah.
Then
Well-
Preston building is, you're looking down.
We're looking down near the 7th hole.
Yeah.
So, which means nothing to you, but
Yeah.
people who play golf there, they know what that means.
So he knows what it means.
So, any other sites that we
Yeah,
have?
wait, hold on. So I want to rephrase your question, and we run into this any place we work, is we're actually not looking for the best site, we're looking for the least bad site. And I say that with a smile, but that's
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
I just said to somebody, the conservation agent the other day, I said, all the easy land was built on a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Agree with that,
Yeah.
Jerry?
Absolutely. Yeah. We've never found this is the perfect site. But, so topography, you know what? If this is the last site standing, we'll make it work. So site I, which is a zone residential and,
The Briggs Corner School.
Where's this?
pretty small site.
It's the Briggs Corner
What
School.
is that site?
Briggs Corner School.
Yeah.
It's the Briggs Corner School,
Oak
the big
Hill
old
Ave.
building.
Oh, okay.
The one we turned into a Project Connect 1,000 years ago.
Right, which Project
Handy
Connect,
Street.
I don't know that they're there anymore,
I don't know what's in the building now, if anything.
Somebody in there?
So it's off of
because I
Handy
thought they were moving to the new high school.
I think they're moving, I don't think they've moved.
Okay, well, if they're moving to the new high school.
But
then-
it's something that is owned by the city already, so.
Yeah, so tell us about this site.
Well, first of all, it is pretty small. So ideally, like 1.7 acres is like the smallest you really want. We can make it work. I mean, if you wanted 150 parking spaces, we couldn't. And then on the other hand, you could probably have on-street parking. We appear to be, we're outside the wetland buffer unless the wetland buffer is moved and the wetlands have moved. So it seems like a viable option. It's certainly, you know, it's usually advisable to have a COA in a prominent location where people know where it is. I mean, this is pretty remote. Again, that's my judgment. Someone else might say, no, we don't want it on a busy street. Seniors will know where to go. But it's something to think about, the remoteness of this.
Right. You have to go to war with the army you have, not the one you want to have.
Yeah. So, again, it seems like a viable option unless
I'd say
it's all wet, unless there's...
This stays on the table.
Stays on the table.
Okay.
Yep.
And we have another.
So I think this, I should know, this is the last one. So South Main Street, Feinberg, it's actually Finburg, right? Yeah. It's actually, yeah. So there's the
Site
school.
was touted to me recently by the second in command in the planning department, Stephanie Davies, thought that this was an excellent location. I said, yeah, but it's in Seekonk. She said, doesn't matter. People will drive there. It's not that far. So I guess...
Right on the main street, too, so...
It's right on the main street.
He's got a beeline right to downtown.
Yep. So
Straight down 120,
would this
152.
be reusing the school, or would you be looking at
Well,
knocking it down?
again, we did the same thing we did with all the schools. We just dropped this on top of it because it's a small building. It's poorly located for laying this out. And again, if somebody said this is a fantastic building, see if you can use it. Otherwise, we just suggest tearing it
This is one of the
down.
buildings that the city wanted to sell off to reduce the high school bond, but on the other hand,
I don't think this building even has an elevator in it.
Yeah, so if this is probably, my guess is it'll be a scraper.
Yeah.
But I guess people from the Council on Aging, do you have any thoughts about, I mean, it is far out of the center, but on the other hand, we already own it.
It's
Joe,
not
do you have
far
any
from
opinion?
Willow Tree.
Seems like we've talked about it a little bit at the board level, and it seems like it was pretty negative response.
But
Well,
that
I think,
was,
to this
it would work
side?
for people who live in the vicinity, but for a number of seniors that have to travel all the way across town to get to.
Yeah, because it's on the Seekonk
But here's the
border.
problem. If you want to be downtown, we have no parking.
Right.
And if you want to be able to have sufficient parking and on a main road, even though it's at the southern end of town, there's a lot to be said for this site, isn't there?
Oh, yeah, wouldn't rule it out.
So I would suggest to you that this should stay on the table, but again, this would be something we'd need input from the mayor and council as to whether the city was committed to selling this or not. Because this was, the Briggs School and this one and the old high school were all supposed to be sold to reduce our $260 million high school expense.
Yeah, but by reusing this, you're also saving money on a purchase somewhere, so...
Because you're not borrowing other money
Right.
to
Right,
put
yeah.
into purchasing. I agree with you, Jerry. So I think this is an interesting site. I do understand the negativity of having it almost in Seekonk, but, you know, I mean, there's a lot of us senior citizens in the room right now. Many of them serve on this commission, and I wouldn't have a problem with driving there. I don't know about others, but...
I drive farther
Could I
than.
just say that one of the things that the Council on Aging director has had to deal with at this site is maintenance. And the maintenance has been a tremendous problem for her. And we would, I think, not want to go into a site where, you know, we're going to have a lot of problems with maintenance of all different kinds. And so, you know, that's one of the considerations in all of these old sites, like Briggs Corner, and as long as we're talking about, you know,
That's right.
building something new
Yeah.
or completely renovating.
Yep. No, I'm
maybe having the
I'm
city
thinking,
take over the whole process.
I'm thinking level, John.
Right.
Level the
Thinking level
site
this building.
and build something from scratch that serves its purpose, rather than doing what we did before on South Main Street,
Right.
which is to make something fit
Yeah.
and then find out that it doesn't fit that well.
Right.
Yeah, and one of the things is a good council on aging has relationships between rooms that tend to be very different from a school. You start out a 10-foot corridor with rooms on the other side. That is a horrible community center or senior center. You know, so many reasons to assume you start over. So what it means to leave this on the table, I'm not quite sure, but certainly because you still need to go through a town process. But there we go. So here's an option. And 1.6 acres, not great, but if this was the least bad or the best site, we can work with
So
that.
it's slightly smaller than the Briggs Corner School.
Yeah, I think that was 1.7, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, Jack, you mentioned that's in the southern part of Attleboro, but I live in South Attleboro, and I don't think it's easy to get to that school at all from South Attleboro. I think
Well,
it's
South
well, I mean,
Attleboro is part of North Pawtucket.
So you cut through Pawtucket.
But it is, but there's a lot of people who live in South
Just
Attleboro.
joking.
Yeah, I know.
I go past there all the time to take my dog down to County Street, down on County Street for grooming.
And this is why
Yeah, it depends on where you are.
I'm coming from La Salette.
Yeah, so when we talk
Yeah.
about south,
Live in
I mean,
Marcelette.
clearly,
But it's
you know,
awkward to get there from
South
South
Attleboro is over on the
South
left, and
It's right up 152.
the Finberg School is more in the middle of that plan that you have there. But again, we don't want Jim Jones to get mad, so you need to go back to the podium.
David, you have to go back to the podium.
what I'm looking for, this is really blurry on the screen. I was just looking, so I went back here. This identifies where all of these sites are. So I think we're talking right there. That's the
Finberg,
site,
yeah.
I believe.
Yeah, it's just before you get into Seekonk,
Yeah.
and the other sites are scattered around the city.
Yeah.
And so we understand the possible sites. I think that if you can email this to Jeremy, I think you said you already have.
Yeah.
He can email this out to all of us, but I think that Jeremy and I are going to have to talk with the mayor about which of these school sites might be on the table and which might not be, about Highland and the Article 97 issue. But we also know that there are a couple of other sites, the NESV site, the YMCA site, that if we could acquire them, might fulfill our needs.
Yeah. So what we've tried to do is answer as many questions as we can. Where is each site in relationship to the center of town or the edge of the town? Answered. Wetlands? Answered, given that it's off Mass GIS topography. All that information is there, size of the site. So hopefully this gives you what you need for further discussions.
And I think it's important that we got this far and understand the sites that you've looked at, because we did give you all of these sites at the beginning. I don't know if there are any other privately owned sites that might be for sale. But obviously you're going to pay top dollar for those if they're for sale. So my thought is that we need to get back to you with some further information during the time that we're hiring a new director and you're completing your programming needs. So, I think next month we should be able to get you some better information.
Okay.
Unfortunately, because of the electoral process, we are going to have an acting mayor starting in a couple of weeks.
January 4th and 3rd.
At
midnight.
January 3rd at 11:59.01 p.m.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. He's gonna be so exact.
And then that person will only be in office until the election, which could be the 7th, the 14th, or the 21st of February. Although I suggested to somebody this morning that we ought to be wild and crazy and hold it on Saturday, February 11th. So I don't know what the city council will do with that.
Saturday.
That's going to be decided, I'm hoping, on the 20th
Yes, and you're going to discuss
of this
it-
month.
And you're going to discuss it next week in committee, I think, further?
Correct.
Yeah, but I know we always have elections on Tuesday, but I think Norton has their election on Saturday.
Saturday.
Think so.
And a lot of other places around the world have elections on Saturdays. I
Could
don't know
happen.
why Tuesday, it's just tradition.
Tradition.
But, one of the things that came up about that election was, well, we used 2 schools as polling places, and if we held it on February 7th, would we have a problem? We know February 21st would work because that's school vacation week, but Saturday may also be on the table. So, Counselor, I put that thought in your mind.
It's in my mind.
And so, but
Saturday would be nice.
we will have a new mayor inaugurated probably before March 1st, and that new mayor will then serve until November, when we're going to have another election. So
We like elections.
we are a little bit politically hamstrung right now.
Yeah. And then I suppose there's the question of how much should or shouldn't this our work be held hostage to changing personnel at the COA and in politics, and the extent that it cannot be held up, but you've got to tell us. We don't want to...
In the end, we can only make a recommendation and ask whoever is the mayor to send a bond issue down to the municipal council. So we are charged with making a decision and supporting that decision, but we don't get to decide whether the money gets spent.
So, is it too soon for us to go around the room and say, having looked at the various choices, which I think was done very well, the way you presented them, is it possible at this point just to say what's our first and second thoughts as we go around the room?
I think that would be very helpful to David to hear that. So what I'd like to do is start with the building commission, and I'll start with Jerry.
My first choice would be Highland if that was available.
Which one?
Highland Park.
Island Park, okay.
Kind of
Yep.
centrally located. There's plenty of land to work with there. There's plenty of parking. It's quiet. It's a nice area for the seniors to go out and about and do stuff outside as well as inside. The one on South Main Street, the Finberg School, while that might not be the greatest location because it's kind of on one side of the city, the site does work. The school would obviously be a knockdown. There'd be no way you could reasonably redo that building as it is. So it would be starting from a blank canvas. The other school, Briggs Corner, you got the same issue with that one. I mean, that's a workable site, but again, you're towards a different part of the city, and that's the issue you're going to have. The Pleasant Street site, that might work, but the city doesn't own it. The TI building, city doesn't own that one either. So those probably are not going to work. The Army Reserve, that definitely is not going to work. The site on Commerce Way, again, the city doesn't own that one either. It would be expensive to develop, but as long as there's no wetlands, the topography could be worked. I mean, look at the ice rink. They made that work. They could tear the
Which is the one you're talking about?
NESV.
NESV.
H.
You would be really helpful if you could just give me the ABCD.
It's H. That was
H. Okay.
The city doesn't own that, so that works against us. The topography could be worked with. It's going to be expensive to do because you get a lot of rock and stuff over there, but it can be done. I would say that would be at the bottom of the list. My first choice would be, and it was before we went through this, the Highland Park, I think, would be a great place for it.
So you're Highland Park, Finberg, Briggs Corner, and then and NESV.
Right.
And I'm sorry, your name?
Jerry.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Gail?
Well, I wasn't going to go through the whole list. The ones that really attracted me was the YMCA in Pleasant Street, which is A, I think. I thought that was a good location. I visited that oftentimes myself, and there's additional parking around, I think, the bank when the bank is closed. So I'd say that would be my first choice. If we could work around Highland Park would be the second choice, based on its central location. And Finberg seemed like a possibility. That was J as well, although it's a little further out. It seemed like a good parcel to work with.
Okay, thank you. Terry?
My first choice would be Highland Park.
And can I ask you, I'm sorry, you all know each other? What your name?
My name is Terry.
Okay.
So I would go with Highland Park as my first choice. Second would be the YMCA. Third would be, I'm kind of torn between NESV and Finberg School, because if we can get the land at NESV cheap, then it wouldn't be too bad. Obviously, land that the city already owns is easier, because then there isn't that much. All you have to worry about is just putting the money into building the building. So that would be my choice.
Thank you. And Jackie?
Yeah, I was told once upon a time that the Army Reserve is the geographical center of the city. that would be a fantastic location for our public safety building. but it's owned by the Army, and there's concerns there.
So for the senior center...
So I'm just saying, geographically, the center of the city is the Army Reserve. So, branching out from that. I think
and you're saying not to put Army Reserve on the...
I'm just saying that's the location.
Okay.
I think my first choice would probably be somewhere between A and C, or C and A. They're kind of equal. There's pluses on both of them. So 1 and 2, or 2 and 1, or whatever.
So YMCA and Highland.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I like Finberg too. So I think those are my favorite
Yeah,
at
from
this
my
particular point.
Thank you. From my point of view, I like the YMCA site. I like Highland, but I don't know if it's legally available. I think the Finberg site is a possibility.
I'm sorry, what was there's YMCA and...
Highland, if it's
Highland,
available.
okay.
Then Finberg School, the last one. And then the other possibility, but I'm wary about the ledge and the topography, would be the New England Sports Village site on Commerce Way. So those are my thoughts at this point. I'll defer now to Councilor Waterman.
Okay. I hope that we can work through the legal issues regarding the park. I think we have some work to do, but that's still my number one choice if we can use it. And I hope that can be worked through in the next month or two. And I don't know enough about it to even speculate what's involved with learning what we have to get. And I would say, as far as Highland goes, the part near the country club, that parcel, that 5-acre parcel where the parking lot exists now, and there's the rise above the rest of it. And you haven't seen any of these places, so it's hard to describe.
Yeah, looked at them from the air, looked at them, but that's right, have not been there, and topography, but not in real life.
My second choice would...
And so Highland is your first?
Yes. My second choice would be the area where the Y is. I don't think that building fits all our needs. I think we have to think twice about what we do with the building that's currently there. We may have to either add to it or but the mayor was also thinking a couple of years ago about renting that. And I don't know if that's a possibility now under a new CEO, but at the Y.
Well, again, we would have to approach them if
Yeah.
we were serious about the site.
Right.
But, so those are your first two choices.
Right, and I think they're,
Why site, let's see, that could, we could build on, you could just leave the building alone, not renovate it, not tear it down, build next to it, so.
you're gonna need more than that building offers.
Well, that's what he's saying, build an additional location. Build another building across the way there.
Right.
And he doesn't even have all the parking marked off on there, because that's parking all the way down the side.
Yep.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I didn't realize, that there's all that land there. I mean,
There's a lot of land.
That's really exciting, where we could build our own building that we want and leave the other building. From the city perspective, I mean, that could become maybe more like a community center. I mean, looking at a bigger picture down
Yes.
the line with the pool and everything that's in there, I mean, it'd be great to have that all together. That could become really quite a nice site.
A partnership
for
with the recreation
population of
department.
Attleboro.
Like
A partnership with the recreation department, I think, is what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Almost. I mean, I don't know. The recreation department's in the armory, which is really kind of falling apart as well. I mean, that might be a great place to have a recreation department. Where you get your rec stuff for the kids, and then you get the COA right across the street.
I also like
Lots
the
of
fact
room.
that you have intergenerational
Yes.
interaction if that happens.
Yeah. I mean,
It's got a lot of space to use.
and it's in a nice area. of town.
It's flat, and the water issues are not there.
Yeah.
No water issues.
And it's way away from where all the
pretty
polluted
central.
area.
Yeah.
It's reasonably central.
Yeah, if I could just jump in, David, one of the things you didn't look at Highland, because we thought that the city might be selling it off, is the place where the current clubhouse is and parking lot is, off of Mechanic Street.
That's what I was thinking.
And so what I think, if Highland comes back on the table, we might look at that, because if we were to knock down the current clubhouse, there is certainly the possibility of building a building there, and there is a lot of land there. But I don't know that that's legally on the table. So but I know that you didn't look at that because that 5-acre piece was going to be sold off, and now that's not the case.
Right. As of very recently, like the last 48 hours.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing, let us know. If we're clear on the parcel, I mean, what we got were parcel numbers, which is really useful, and addresses, we can do the same thing. We can add it on. We can sort of take some off. We can put some on.
So I'd like to go to Joe next.
Well, my number one choice would be Highland Park, but of course I understand there's legal issues, so if that can get resolved. Second would be Pleasant Street, where the Y is. I've been there. It's a good. I don't know if it's a central location, but it's a good parcel with a lot of land there. Third would probably be H, the NESV, but again, there's issues there, but maybe at least worth exploring.
Okay. John?
Yeah, I think Highlands first, and then I did tour that site on Pleasant Street, not realizing how much land there was there. But the building itself is not something that would be appropriate for a council on aging. You'd have to build a council on aging building that had open areas,
That's right.
and had facilities to get, up and down.
So YMCA is your first choice?
Yeah.
Second.
And
Second.
No, Highland's my first choice.
Okay.
But I do think that, I think to say, I don't think we should neglect to further explore the reserve center, because we say, well, it's not going to be available for 4 years. Well, are you going to have money before 4 years?
Oh, yeah, we're going to have money in the spring, John.
I mean, that's going to
As soon
be
as
a
the mayor
battle.
leaves.
Public safety, and you know how that's going to go. So, I do think you should explore that further to determine whether or not the facility is something that you could use. I don't think anybody's really taken a look at it.
Once upon a time, the mayor, previous mayor, was in the process of trying to get that exchange for part of the NESV. And there was potential of just doing an out-and-out trade. And then the Army found a better place out in Taunton.
Well, you know.
So they were
I was
willing to
a
throw it away
I was
a number of
chairman-
years ago.
I was the chairman of city property when we bought the post office from the federal government. Okay? Now that was a totally different situation because they want to get rid of it. Because they were going to go down Pleasant Street.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think we should look into it further. I gave, you know, Kyle Bradshaw, who's a former veterans agent here in Attleboro. Well, I asked him to look into it, and he did a little bit, he gave me the name of an Army official to pass on to the mayor, which I did, but I don't think the mayor was interested.
Well, I know that we had it set so that there was a good potential of exchanging the NESV, a portion of the NESV, before it was the NESV.
I just think it, you know, should be looked at. I think it should.
And it is the geographical center of the city.
Okay, hear you.
Yeah, Steve Benson.
Steve?
Yep.
So what's your name?
Steve Benson.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree. I mean, if Highland Park was on the table and possible, that probably should be the #1 site. I really am intrigued a little bit, though, about the YMCA site as building extra. I also didn't realize there was all that extra land, and we wouldn't have to take a building down. We could build a building that would be perfect for us to do the parking there, and that's relatively central. I agree with you. The Army Reserve is a nice site if that's possible. Having gone to Finberg School a long time ago, it's hard to believe that it's still standing. I also was I also was in the first year to go into what was the new high school, and it's embarrassing when you're old enough that it's being torn down. So, I mean, that Finberg site was certainly the school.
That high school is actually gone now.
Yeah.
They're just trucking away. Yeah, they're trucking away
The last bit.
the last bits. In about 10 days, there will be
Highland Park
nothing
YMCA,
left.
the reserve in Finberg.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, further back?
That's Mike Parker.
My first choice is definitely Highland. And after that, it would definitely be the YMCA.
Okay, thank you. And
Karen
Hammond.
Karen Hammond.
Karen Hammond. That's me. So, like everybody else, if Highland was available, that would be great. YMCA #2.
Oh, I'm sorry, the first one was?
Highland.
Okay.
Second, YMCA. I don't know. I really don't know about the Army Reserve. I know it's centrally located, but I'm concerned about, we've got to figure out if it, like you said, it's got lead, whether its availability is an issue.
Well, again, that's not really an issue, but that's probably going to be a knockdown too, so.
Probably a knockdown too.
Almost all of them
Yeah. you're
probably going to be
right.
knocked down, so.
So Highland YMCA,
I also like the NASV site though, but I recognize
More than
that
likely.
that's,
It's rotting away at the
I mean, the YMCA would probably be the only one that you would save.
Plug for him. I think Fitbird's too far out. That's just me. It's really out there on the border, isn't it? It's also not very big. The site's not very big. Is it just over an acre?
all right, thank you.
So, yeah, I guess my third choice would be probably the NESV's land.
Okay.
It's a slope issue.
Okay, and to my right.
Yes, I'm Carol O'Connor, and I would, like what the others say, if Highland is available, and I think my preference would be where the clubhouse is now, up in that area of it, but that can be decided. And then the YMCA, I am familiar with that building and the land about it. And I understand why that building wouldn't work as a COA. But the whole area would be very good, could be very adapted. Both schools mentioned, I think they're small, and the just the area they're in. I think those would be my least favorite, and I'm not familiar with all of the other sites. I'm not that familiar with the NASV.
Okay, so you're focused in on Highland and YMCA.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's the consensus, is
Yep.
that if Highland's available, if it's not, I think we might well want to talk to the next mayor about approaching the YMCA to see what they would want in exchange for the land.
Well, we seem to be focusing in on a few sites. So one of the things that we could do is develop something that's more than just a rectangle, that starts to feel and look like a community, a senior center, and drop that on the site more like a plan. Now, on all of these, they could go different places on different sites. I'm trying to figure out how to move this forward incrementally.
Well, I think at this point, we really need to talk to the mayor and the solicitor about whether Highland could be on the table or not.
Okay.
Because I think that if there's no possibility, we need to understand that and we need to move on. So I think that's an important thing. And I'll talk to Jeremy tomorrow, and we'll talk to the current mayor and see what his thoughts are.
Can I also suggest that, depending on what the current mayor says, we might want to talk to the next acting mayor as well?
Yes.
So that you might get different views.
They certainly might. I don't know. So what happens when the current mayor's resignation is effective at 11:59 p.m. on January 3rd, the president of the city council, the person who sits in this seat most of the time, then becomes the acting mayor, and until the special election occurs. So we know who that is. It's Jay DeLisio. So I think that we ought to talk to the current mayor, but we might well want to get some input from Jay. He is one of the candidates in the special election. Another member of the city council, Kathleen DeSimone, is also a candidate. And the third candidate is John Davis, who is not currently an office holder. And so one of the three of those people will be the mayor for at least the next 8 or 9 months after that. So, and then we'll get back to a mayor serving for 2 years.
So it sounds like I'll keep talking to Jeremy, you'll talking to Jeremy.
And I'll get Nick to give you some wetlands information on a couple of sites that we know he probably has. And but I think this has been very helpful, and I think that it was good to get this process started. But I think we have an obligation to let you know which site you really should concentrate on. And I think this preliminary was very good.
Okay, and so that's good. I think my suggestion is that you have us move forward incrementally on COA programming and conceptual floor plans, which will help people visualize this, which will push the conversation forward, may not finalize it, but it'll push that conversation forward.
Right, because in the end, it's what, where, and how much.
Yeah.
And we need to work on the what and the where. Ty, did you have a question?
So the activity that we now have going on, quite a bit of activity at the West Street Church, the Good News Bible Church. I don't know if you've experienced that. It would be very helpful, I think, for you to see what is happening down there for different exercise groups. And it's not just the Thanksgiving and Christmas activity, that's the big, but the regular every weekly thing, there's a lot of exercise groups going on where they're using half of a gym floor. And where anywhere from 50 to 60 people are sometimes in these groups.
And I think you'd mentioned this West Street Baptist Church.
Yes.
It's called Good News Bible.
Good News Bible Chapel.
Good News
you
Bible.
can get a good idea of what kind of parking we need when you see the number of cars that fill up a fairly large parking lot, and it's pretty filled right now, and get to see it inside and see the size of the groups and how they're able to be seated in a comfortable way. We're going to be more crammed perhaps than we think if we don't visualize what's already happening.
Yeah. And how many parking spaces do they have? Or I can take a look at that. I'll go and
Hundreds.
see.
150 to 200 parking spaces.
Yeah. But their facility, how big are their spaces?
It's big, yeah. And it has a kitchen adjoining it, and a stage in it, and storage rooms coming off of it, and a big entryway. It's very big.
So
And
what you're
there
saying,
are-
we should buy the church.
I know.
turn it
Yeah,
into-
well, just buy the entryway, that would work great.
There
Well,
are
because there's no
at
office
least,
space. They don't have
there are senior center activities there at least twice a week. Twice every week. I think it's Monday and
I think it's more than
Friday.
that, because there's
Is it
also
more than that?
line dancing.
No, also, there's also groups on Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So it's like 3 days a week, there are activities
4
there,
days a week.
senior center activities there, and then and all the special events, almost all the special events are there.
But this is in addition to current activities in our smaller building, where we have lunches and a variety of groups that use a much smaller space.
And I guess I don't understand. You used, because the senior center you have is inadequate, you
Yes.
used Good News
Bible Chapel, yes.
We
Chapel.
can't accommodate the number of people that want to exercise. We've had to actually double the number of classes of Good News because we couldn't get everybody in.
Yeah. So this is what happens there now. You anticipate having at the new senior center when it's built.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it may be, because like the 60 parking spaces is based on what we've seen and heard. If you really have a robust program, and some of our work is in towns of 11,000 people, 9,000 people. You are a city that's significantly larger, but then the budget. What I think it was like $10 million is what we heard. Wouldn't spend more than $10 million. That's not a big facility. So sort of torn between what I hear, want to accommodate that. Obviously, you don't want to spend $10 million, and it's like, whoa, it's too small. There isn't enough parking, and then budget limitations. So somehow we need to navigate through this. But this is a really good heads up. This is a city, robust programs, you need to accommodate them. So maybe our...
Build it, they'll come kind of thing is what's happening.
We have what, 20,000 population of seniors? Well, approximately 20,000.
No, not, I think more like 15, I think.
Is it 15?
Yeah, I would say
Approaching
14.
The
15.
projection is.
The projection.
Eventually.
But we also have to take into account that we're a growing city.
Yeah.
And we don't know how big this city will be 20 years from now. But it's grown by about 5,000 people in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So
Well, I was just talking to my partner who was saying, and I think it was $10 million was...
Well, that was a number that the mayor suggested. And, we understand that we're not going to build a $30 million facility. And we understand that a $5 million facility is going to be inadequate before we put a shovel in the ground. So I think that $10 million rule of thumb was what he was thinking about. But, if you tell us it's 12 to do it and we need to go to the mat, then we'll need to go to the mat. But I think we need to do the what and the where so we can put a good number on it.
So I think the next step will be to suggest to you small, medium, and large senior centers, because the number I've seen is a small senior center. What I'm hearing is you need a large senior center because you're a city and you're growing, and lay those out. And if you say we need the big but we got the small budget, you got to tell us where to go with that. But we will try and frame the dialogue, because this is really good information.
What I think is that I think you need to visualize it yourself. you need to come down, and we
Yes.
can arrange for that, to what's going on at this other facility, the church, in addition to when we're active downtown. And it's got to fit all of that.
So is there someone need to tour these facilities as well as the sites? Who would, given all the turmoil, is there someone that can say, David, come out here at 2 o'clock on Wednesday, I'll walk you through, I'll narrate this.
Ty.
Ty.
Yeah, we can do that. Ty and I can do that.
Karen
Okay.
could be part of that,
And
too.
Karen,
I
yeah.
can help out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how do we, and I think I would bring my partner as well.
Bring anybody you want.
Yeah. So how do
Jack would
we
probably
set
wanna
this
join
up?
us.
Should we go through Jeremy to set this up?
I think you should go through Jeremy for a matter of form, but I think he'll simply probably say, contact the gentleman directly and you know,
Or you
arrange
guys
it with
exchange
them.
numbers.
But I think as a matter of form, we should run through everything through our capital projects administrator, yes.
Okay. Can maybe it makes sense for you to give Jeremy a heads up, because I'm not sure I have people's names spelled right. Say.
I'm going to talk to Jeremy extensively tomorrow.
Yes, good. Okay, and then we will set up a time to meet. This will be really good. This is exactly what we need to do, because we can't rely on a new COA director. And then I suspect, having done that, we will wait to do that and then start developing like small, medium, large plans, whatever we need to keep the discussion going. Maybe you need a $20 million facility. Whether you want to pay for it or not, I don't know.
Well, you know, we need to answer the what and the where questions.
Yep.
Then we can put a number on it. And
Yeah.
if it,
Yep.
then we have to talk to the powers that be. So
Yeah.
it's the only way we can operate. So I want to thank you for tonight.
Thank you.
I want to thank all of those who participated with us tonight. And then we still have to pay the bills, so that'll take us another minute or two. But other than paying the bills,
Okay. Thank you. And going forward, what time is it?
it's
7:10.
7:18.
Okay, so I said 60 to 90 minutes, so there we go.
You made
So I think my guess is to allow enough time to go back and forth if that's what we're going to do in future meetings, but we can...
Well, what I talked to Jeremy about today was that because we're always bumping up against the Conservation Commission, that perhaps we can do a future meeting over at the new high school in the Zito room, where we would not have time constraints. And where actually the graphics that you can put up on the screen are better. So we may well meet at the new high school
Okay.
in the new year for the next meeting with them.
Okay. So I will talk to Jeremy, too, to make sure I get meetings on the calendar. And my only request, let's do meetings, let's make them substantive, let's leave the time.
Generally meet on the first Wednesday of the month,
Yeah,
but we hold extra meetings when we need to.
yeah.
So, as I said, we need to pay the bills and we need to go home, but thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, David.
Okay, so we have a bill for Port Consulting for November services for $1,800. We have a bill from Socotec for October services for $36.15. We have a bill from KVA for the public safety through 11/30, $29,002. And we have that gym floor bill for $175, $128.28. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second?
Is there any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So, we are going to meet on 12/21, perhaps here, perhaps at the Zito room, and we are going to meet on 1/4, perhaps here, and perhaps at the Zito room.
All right.
So, stay tuned. So, other than that, anybody have anything else they want to bring up? Okay, then motion to adjourn at 7:20?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
They built the high school.